Hey everybody, Mary Fran Bontempo here. I am the host of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. And before we get started with today's show, I just wanted to let you in on a little secret. Very soon, a brand spanking new Brilliantly Resilient book is about to drop, and this one has all of the fun that you've come to expect, all of the lessons, and it's a step-by-step process of how to live a brilliantly resilient life. Pre-orders are going to be available on Amazon soon, so be sure to check with the podcast regularly, and also head on over to our Brilliantly Resilient Facebook community where I'll be providing more updates. Okay, make sure you get ready. It's a great Christmas gift, and now let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you just visiting or are you going to live there? I'm Mary Fran Bontempo. Join me and let's learn how to come through those train wrecks, not broken, but brilliant. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brilliantly Resilient Live. I am with a friend, actually an in-law of the other Mary Fran who I went to school with today. It's a very long, convoluted story, but Brian Nolan and I are probably related on some level. I don't know. But I wanted to, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about Brian, who is formerly the Chief Operating Officer for the Baltimore Medical System and also formerly the VP of Operations at Fortis Inc. And he's now the managing partner of Nolan Consulting Group. But the reason I wanted to talk to Brian today is that Brian is a person who stutters, who has a passion for helping young people who stutter spring to the next level. Brian, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Mary Fran. The introduction was great, but I just got to start by saying I did this team building recently exercise with customers, and I said, "What's the thing you're most proud of?" And all those things you mentioned, I could have said those, but what I'm most proud of is 2.5 years ago, I started Nolan Stuttering Foundation. Because like the other things I felt like I was destined to do, I'm a climber in terms of climbing the corporate ladder, being great things, but to really honor the pebble in your shoe and to run back towards the very thing that you've been running from and has scared you, and to then be vulnerable, well, that's what I'm most proud of, actually.
All right. Well, you've just given me the best quote you could possibly give me, so I don't know how much more we have to say, but we're going to dig deep into this. And to your point, that's exactly what Brilliantly Resilient is about. It's about recognizing and I don't want to be stupid here and get all the, oh, my challenges are blessings, because, let's face it, they suck.
They're tough. They're tough.
They're tough. Exactly. And nobody would willingly say, yeah, give me some more of that, But the people that I have met on this show and who have had challenges and have had to really dig deep and find their resilience, very often, first of all, find their passion within that space,
Right.
and then go on very often to be of service to other people, which ends up being their area of brilliance. And it sounds like that's the path that you are following here.
Yeah, I'm 61. I run a pretty successful consulting firm. I'm lucky enough to have two of my kids in the business and a large team of coaches, which is allowing me now more time to spend time on, well, what's become very purposeful work, which is helping young adults springboard to young adults who stutter. And we'll get into that. One of the things I'm hoping you're going to ask me, so I'll tee it up, is what is stuttering and is it misunderstood? And that's one of my passions because, man, it is misunderstood.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's exactly where I want to start. When I was a child, a dear friend of my father and mother's, whom I called Uncle, we're all somehow related, like I said, but his Uncle Bob stuttered. And he was the only person that I really knew. And then his daughter, his daughter Emery, she also stuttered. But they were really the only two people that I knew who stuttered. But it was it had a profound effect on me as a child because
Yeah.
I had no idea what this was. You know, what what caused this, what it is. And this is the other thing that we need to get into, how to react to it as a person
Ah.
who doesn't stutter. So let's start at the beginning and define for us, if you would, what stuttering actually is.
Well, so it's a neurological disorder, and uh, the part that's misunderstood is people think you stutter because you're nervous, and I say to people, "Is there anything weak about me?" Nothing. And so it starts somewhere around 4, 5, or 6 years old. And then two-thirds of the people who have it, actually, it goes away by the time they're 7 or 8. The 1/3 of the people who get it and it doesn't go away by 7, 8, it's not curable ever. Um,
Okay.
it's bizarre, but it just is. Now, I manage it well. I'm a public speaker, keynote speaker. I talk for a living. If you would ask me when I was 16, if I was going to do that, I would have said, "Oh, wow." In fact, my dad said, "Brian, I think you should think about being a computer programmer because you don't have to talk to people." Um, and that was really, 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 really sad for me because you see, I pretended to be an introvert because that meant that I wouldn't have to talk much. And you only knew a few people because there are a lot of covert stutterers, a lot.
And I think that's probably very true, but and I probably know others, but these two are the first. And
Yeah,
it really made an impression on me, not the least of because it was just Uncle Bob and there was just something different about the way he spoke. But in getting a little bit older, it really piqued my curiosity.
yeah.
And I think that it's a very common misconception that people assume there's a nervous element and that this is a controllable thing. If only you could, take a breath, take a minute. Okay, well, thanks.
Oh,
That's like when they
slow
tell you to
down and
relax.
breathe, or use your tools. What we're really talking about is the brain, and it's so much less about the speech mechanics than it is about the neurological neuropathways, which you can manage it like I've started to, and where it no longer dominates your conversation. Um, but to go back to something in a book that I read. People who stutter, they look, they get that look from people that are looking at them like, what's wrong with him? And so they look away, and that gives us more shame. Or they finish our sentences. That gives us more shame. And so I coach these kids now, and we deserve airtime. And so therefore, we feel more pressure because they look away. We only have so much time to get out the word we want. And we see the word ahead of time often that we're going to stutter on. So we do. And one of the things that I coach around is if you think you can or if you think you can't, you're probably right. And people who stutter have an amazing ability to vision. And I'm a visionary. So as a kid, I visioned I was going to stutter. So I did. And I've done a lot of self-work. I do a lot of self-talk. I do things like CBT to have self-awareness. And now I vision success. I slow down, and I'm able to manage it better, but it's not cured by any stretch. In fact, um, I am still so uncomfortable stuttering. On this podcast, I will switch a word. You won't even know it because I'm so good at switching words. But there's shame in that because I can't say the word. Now, it's not, I have awareness. It just is. So I'm trying to have awareness, like to not have that shame. Um,
So um, is the shame a product of other people's reactions, or is it more an internal product of, and I'm using probably incorrect wording here, but is it more a result of I'm not like anybody else and I can't be, air quotes here, normal?
yeah. Well, the shame is trauma. Um,
Okay.
the shame is from trauma. The shame is from sixth grade, in class, going up and down to read, and you read a paragraph and then the next kid moves on. And you're counting the paragraphs ahead of time of the one that you're going to have to read. And then you start to sweat, and it's a cold sweat, and it's miserable. I can't, and you will do things like you will leave the room to go to the bathroom right before it's your time to talk. Even my first job at Aetna, when I was a professional and not noticeably stuttering much, you go around the room, there's 15, 16 executives, say your name, where you're from, those type of things. And you leave the room to go to the bathroom and walk back in. There's shame. There's a momentary relief followed by extended shame and trauma that then revisits itself. So I'm trying to open stutter more because I've reached a level of acceptance that I'm proud of, but I'm nowhere near where I need to be. I interview people in podcasts that openly stutter, and I'm so proud of them because they do it without shame. And see, that's the real issue. The real issue is shame. Every day, Mary Fran, when you stutter as a kid, every day is a battle. Every day you wake up, you think through the lens of someone who stutters, and you think about the people you're going to have to see, how you're going to have to talk in class, am I going to have to read? And you're like, I just have to get by the day, every day. It's literally, I mean, I could literally weep.
I'm exhausted just hearing you say that. And then imagining, I mean, I've got 9 grandkids, imagining any one of them having to wake up in the morning and like literally prepare for their entire day,
Yep.
minute by minute and step by step. Because I mean, let's face it, speech is our essential way of communication. And when that's not something that you do easily or, you know, without some kind of a challenge, it has to affect every single moment of your life.
Yeah, it's hard to even overemphasize how the stuttering lens overlays the whole self. And so the joy, I told you.
Hey, I feel it. I mean, you just go give me everything you've got,
Yeah.
because this is such a misunderstood
Yeah.
topic. And I really want people to get what this is about.
Yeah.
And also, I want to move on to this at some point, how we as non-stuttering people can be gracious and kind and, quite frankly, do the right thing to be supportive in the moment with
Yes.
someone who is struggling, because we don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, you know, you think
Yeah.
you're doing somebody a favor by finishing their sentence, and I can't imagine
You,
that
you
feels
think you
good.
are, but you just said to them, you're not capable. And you see, we don't stutter in our thoughts. I was always one of the smartest kids too, Mary Fran. I knew the answers to most of the questions that a teacher would say and never raised my hand. In fact, I would duck behind the person in front of me until college. I'm a twin. I don't know if you knew
I
that,
didn't know that, no.
which is even more interesting because my twin was often my voice, and because we're good friends. And the odd thing about it is I'm more of an extrovert than he is. Uh, and when I went to college, St. Joe's University, he went to Villanova, 6 miles down the road. I had an amazing experience. I still have friends to this day. My life really began when I was 18 and realized that I like the term, I needed to be fearlessly authentic. And I found out who I was, and I started to organize toy drives for kids. And it was just like this discovery that probably a lot of people have when they're younger. And so when you stutter, the only way out is through it. Maybe that's like a lot of things, because anxiety and avoidance, actually, the biggest problem with people who stutter is avoidance, which then becomes a spin. And the next time you have to go up to a barista and order a caramel frappuccino, you can actually order something you don't even want.
Oh,
Can I tell you how many times
this
that
is
happens?
hurting me. I mean, it just hurts. It just
Yeah,
hurts to hear this.
you order a coffee because you can say coffee, and because you don't think the person in front of you is going to have the patience, or you don't want to be embarrassed because what they would think. We go through life thinking about what other people will think of us. And when I had an emotional breakdown shortly ago, it's the joy of no longer judging ourselves by how other people judge us. And it's the joy of becoming authentic and talking about stuttering. No one talks about stuttering in
No.
families. It's the biggest secret everybody knows about. And maybe if we don't talk about it, it'll go away. And that makes it worse. And there's some whispers and things like that. And then all of a sudden, the teachers stop calling on you. So, gosh, thank goodness. But then that trauma means I can never be called about. I couldn't read out loud in a public setting until like maybe 5, 6 years ago because of trauma of reading out loud, even though I speak for a living now. That trauma comes racing back. The heart starts beating. The sweat comes on you. So, and two of my kids stutter. Two of my boys. It's hereditary. It's passed down. So then you have the guilt of that.
Yeah. Boy, you are really one messed up dude.
But I am, you know what? But once you can manage your thoughts around stuttering, here's the joy. I can manage anything.
Yeah.
I control my peace and joy. I control it after a lot of years, because when I was 50, I started running back towards my stutter and realizing that I think it was divine that you now go back and help. You see things. So now my biggest fear is that a young kid is going to not go to college or not apply for a job because they're afraid of the interview process. So now I run workshops for kids who stutter, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. We practice interview skills. We practice disclosure.
That's key. That has to be key to this.
The most important thing you could do, disclose. Hey, it may take me a little longer to get things out because I stutter, but it doesn't mean I don't know my stuff.
And you know what? I think, quite frankly, you really kind of hit on something, because I think that people who do not stutter and who encounter someone who does don't really know how to react. Like, do I pretend this isn't happening? Do I finish the sentence? Do I just stand here and stare at them? But when and then that person makes it just a natural part of, listen, in this conversation, I'm probably going to stutter. So then the other person is like, oh, okay, I can deal
It
with
takes
that.
everything. It takes everything and makes it right. Plus, you become more likable, frankly, because you're authentic.
Exactly.
Vulnerability is one of the greatest leadership skills.
It totally is. And I think that it is an equalizer.
Yep.
I think when someone has the courage to be vulnerable in such a personal way, the other people to whom they are speaking can immediately go, oh, okay, I got a bunch of crap too.
Well, that's just it. Everybody has something.
Level.
Everybody has something.
Exactly. So when somebody comes to you and goes, this is what's going on with me, so here's where we are on the playing field, you can meet them right there.
Totally.
And that makes it
actually
so much easier for everybody.
I have a friend who's a lawyer. He's a litigator and he stutters. And he says the fact that he stutters helps him win cases.
I'll bet it does.
Because people think he's real. When I interview candidates, you have 45 minutes, an hour to find out who is this person? And is this person being real to me? If someone discloses something like that, I'm like, oh, I'm getting a real person here. I like you a
Thank God
lot. Let's
for it.
talk. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Thank God for it.
so yeah.
So I'm looking at the things that we wanted to talk about, and I think we've hit a lot of them in terms of well, maybe we need to do a better job of creating awareness. So how do we do that without putting undue burden on the person who is stuttering because they've already got enough of a burden? But how do we, as I said, people who do not stutter, how do we become more aware of it? And how do we gracefully and kindly and supportively deal with somebody who does?
You know, it's interesting. I'm part now of a national advocacy council that's brought together 7 organizations that help people who stutter. It's wonderful. We just met in Washington, D.C. And frankly, we own this. The people who stutter need to stop being covert, and they need to reach out and get involved with uh, one of the many stuttering foundations that are out there, like the Nolan Stuttering Foundation, like the NSA, like Say, like We Speak. There's a whole bunch of them. You could just Google them. Get involved. If you stutter, we need to hear your voice. I just did a podcast that's going to go out next, that just launched. It's called The Silence of Stuttering. And the silence is we dive deep, and so we're not talking about it. You know, one of the bigger issues too, I talk about, are parents. It's really tough being a parent and your child is 5 or 6, and for some reason they begin stuttering, and we don't know why. The cause is not there. We we know it's hereditary. We know it's in the DNA. I'm part of a research study now, so are my kids, to find out the gene that gets activated. So there's a gene, it gets activated somehow.
Mhm.
It's suppressed and then gets activated. What activates it? We don't know. Whatever trauma happens, but something does. Um, so you're a parent and your 6-year-old is so happy, so innocent, hasn't been bullied yet. The sadness, as a parent, you're only as happy as your saddest kid.
Mhm.
Uh, and so parents need education on this because they go to a speech pathologist. That's that's another conversation that I want to hold, because there's weaknesses in there in terms of how to treat stuttering. But they say, can you fix my son? Can you help make him fluent? And the answer is no, my friend. You can't. But what you can do is you can help them communicate. You can help them learn how to disclose. You can help them avoid less. There's one of the greatest therapies is called avoidance reduction therapy, and it's brutal, but you have to go through it. And because then the fear goes away, because it's always not as bad as the fear of stuttering. So I want to put together peer groups of parents to talk and share and to learn more about this. I come from a really big family. My wife is one of 10 kids. I have 2 sons, and we've never talked about stuttering to any of Agnes's siblings. So just in the last year, uh, my son Jack and I did a podcast, and um, I sent it around to all the Ag siblings, and it was beautiful. And then, because at Christmas time, we're like 30 or 40 people, and it was always very awkward. It's like everyone knows, and so then Jack isn't sure who to talk to, and people are looking away because they're not sure. So I own that. I own it as a parent to make it more aware to people about what it is and what it's not to finish sentences, to not lose eye contact, and for Jack to disclose it. So we at People Who Stutter need to talk more about it. We own this because we're all covert.
Well, and I appreciate that because again, I don't think anybody wants to be unkind, and you want to be helpful. But in a situation like that, there really isn't any way to help. Let's be frank. There's no way to help to make a situation
Your
better.
help is to listen.
Right. Okay, so that's the key. Stand there,
Don't lose eye
maintain eye
contact.
contact, and listen.
Yeah. And conversationalize it as quickly as you can so that all of a sudden it's not about his or her stutter. So
So what do you mean by that? Conversationalizers?
like feedback, oh wow. So what I heard you say is that you're looking for a job now, and it's going to be in the some field. I love that field. My brother just did that. So get in, don't make it about, like, have a conversation.
Right. It moves away from that moment. In other words, move away from that moment right into whatever the conversation would be.
Yeah. It's hard, but we react to our stutter the way people react to our stutter.
Right.
So people see us, they look away, they look down because they're uncomfortable. What am I supposed to do?
Right.
So if we could just ask you to look and listen, give the gift of 100% attention. I coach around that anyway. Like, what you find out is people who stutter are often better communicators than people who don't.
Well,
we don't like to waste words.
They think about it all the time. I mean, in terms of the practice makes perfect bit, at least in their minds, the wording, the thought process, everything that they do, they probably do it exponentially more times than anyone else going into a conversation. I mean, I know for me, one of the most terrifying things, because I am a closet introvert, is going to these networking events and having to talk to people. And it's terrifying. And I know how many times I go through a conversation in my head when I'm about to go into those environments. I can't even begin to imagine what that must feel like for someone who then has a liability, for lack of a better way of putting it, in terms of actually saying the words.
So like, I'm an extrovert. So I used to think, if I could only talk, I would be amazing inside of these networking groups. And
you'd
be
the guy I'd be saying, hey, stand next to me and say stuff for me.
I'm a wingman. So I started to get better at this in college when I got dropped off at St. Joe's. I'm from Long Island. I don't know anybody. They drop me off. I'm in my room. I stutter. I don't know how I'm going to tell people my name, because people stutter on their name all the time. Because, like, you're expected to know your name. You can't switch that word. And so I'm sitting in my dorm room by myself, and I hear people talking in the suite. And it was a moment of truth in my life. What am I going to do? Am I going to wait in the room, or am I going to go out there? So by the gift of God, I got strong, and I walked out, and I got off my heels and onto my toes. And I said, hi, my name's Brian. What's yours? I'm Steve. Turns out Steve was more nervous than me. Yeah. I caught that right away. He's like, I'm Steve. I'm from here. I'm like, oh, okay. And then someone else walked by. I said, hi, I'm Brian. This is Steve. What's your name? I'm Mike. Hey, Mike. Within an hour, I had about a dozen friends. And I learned that offense better than defense. I had spent 18 years on defense. 18 years waiting to just get pushed back. Now you go for it. So we who stutter, we have grit. We who stutter, we have empathy. We who stutter, listen carefully, and we stay in a conversation. These are some of the blessings you said earlier. It doesn't make it easy. And when you're tired, it's tougher because again, this is a neurological situation and your brain. I have a doctor, neurologist at Children's Hospital who came and spoke to us, and he showed us an MRI. He stutters. He showed us an MRI of him speaking and where the blood was in the brain. And it was in a different part of the brain than a person who doesn't stutter.
Wow.
Fascinating, because the brain is adapting to speech. And it's fascinating. So the biggest myth is that you stutter because you're nervous.
Right.
Nervousness exacerbates it.
Right.
But
As it does with most situations, nervousness can exacerbate everything. I mean, your
exactly,
performance level in any area. So,
exactly.
but something that intrinsic and something that's that basic to getting us to the next step. As you say, your one of your goals is to help kids spring up to the next step, young people. Something that's so intrinsic to helping us do that and not being
Mhm.
able to do it effectively, at least, initially effectively, or however you want to put it. That's incredibly challenging. And
Incredibly.
I'm so happy that we had this conversation because at its heart, what I'm basically hearing is the idea of authenticity, the idea of own whatever is going on with you, because the energy that it takes to try to hide it and work around it
Oh,
is such a burden that you can free yourself of if you immediately say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm bringing to the table. And that's what it's about. What are you bringing to the table? Be clear, be honest about that. And as for us people on the receiving end of that, be aware, be attentive. That is huge. Be 100% present.
it's really, really hard to do. Um, and the worst thing that you could do besides finishing sentences to a person is say, that was really good. You didn't stutter at all.
Oh, good Lord. Do people
I,
actually do that?
oh, well, so picture me,
Oh,
seventh grade confirmation. We all were online in church. My mom's in the back, and we each have to go up to the mic and do a Hail Mary. And I did really well. And my mom's like, you did really well. You didn't stutter at all. Now, for the moment, that felt good. The problem was that there's going to be a time pretty shortly after that I was going to stutter. That meant I did bad. And
mm.
so we beat ourselves up, my friend. I'm not sure when I stopped beating myself up. When I do get a block, I will momentarily have shame. But as I said, it's a neural pathway that comes about through historical trauma
Hmm.
of being bullied as a young kid.
I think the anyone who's been through trauma, and I've said this before about my experiences with my son and his addictions and all, there is a part of cellular memory that is soaked in that has absorbed that. But once again, just like everything else, if you see it, if you acknowledge it, and you can say, oh wait, okay, I know this, I know where this is coming from,
Right.
then you can better put it in its place and move on. So all of this is about peeling back the layers of the onion and getting to the crux of this. And
Yeah.
again, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing this. I want you to tell everybody where they can learn more about the Nolan
Yeah.
Stuttering Foundation.
So
And
I'll share this. I'm not sure if this is going to be videoed, but I have a podcast called the Stuttering
yes,
Springboard, where I've interviewed everybody from President Biden's speech coach to my nephew, to my sons, to doctors, to people from Ireland who stutter, and they share their stories. The website is nolansf.org. I have about 30 2 or 3 minute video clips segregated by people in a college hunt or career hunt or parents to be educated, because you asked, I said, we own this. So I am taking it on myself to help change the world. And my next 2 decades of life, God willing, will make a dent. You know, I may not finish that effort, but I'm certainly going to start it.
Well, I am beyond thrilled that I can help you in sharing this and in spreading the word, because it's such an important topic. It's another example that we have to own who we are and what we bring, and as receivers of that, we have to respect where other people are coming from. So,
That's right.
Brian, I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Yeah, thank
I am
you.
most appreciative.
And I say to people listening, I end all my podcasts by be brave, be bold, be authentically you.
I love that. That is the epitome of what being brilliantly resilient means.
Yeah,
Be brave, be bold, and be authentically you. I couldn't end a show better. So thank you
thank
so
you.
much for joining us, everybody. If you need a little bit more brilliance to get through your day, head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net, where you can sign up for our Brilliance Bit, get a little bit more brilliance to keep you living a brilliantly resilient life. Thanks for joining me again, Brian. Everybody, we will see you next time on another episode of Brilliantly Resilient Live. Thanks for tuning in to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Join our Facebook group and follow us on YouTube to be inspired with tools to reset, rise, and reveal your brilliance.